The mind is stronger than the body, boy tells wheelchair-bound grandmother. Until this happens. Dorothy Williams felt the weight of silence as she watched the children running through Washington Square Park. 3 months had passed since a simple fall in her kitchen changed everything, leaving her legs motionless and her heart even heavier. That's when she felt a small hand touch her arm. Michael, her 6-year-old grandson, had bright eyes and that smile which always managed to draw at least one less painful sigh from her. "Grandma, Teacher Melissa said something really important at school today," the boy said, climbing onto the bench beside her wheelchair. "What was it, sweetheart?" Dorothy tried to smile, but bitterness still dominated her expression. She said the mind is stronger than the body, that when we really believe in something, our thoughts can work miracles. Her grandson's words echoed in her mind like a distant whisper of hope, but Dorothy just shook her head sadly. How could a child understand what it meant to wake up every day without feeling your own legs? "Michael, that's just something adults say to..." She began to reply, but was interrupted. "Grandma Dorothy, Michael!" Patricia's urgent voice cut through the afternoon air. Her daughter walked quickly toward them, holding a folder of documents and wearing an expression Dorothy knew well, that mix of determination and exhaustion her daughter had carried for months. "Mom, I'm glad I found you here. I need to talk to you about something very important," Patricia said, barely greeting them properly. Dorothy's heart raced. Whenever her daughter used that formal tone, some decision had already been made without consulting her. "I found the perfect solution for our situation. A wonderful care facility with everything you need. Physical therapists, doctors, activities." Patricia spoke quickly as if trying to convince herself as much as her mother. Dorothy's world crumbled again. So this was it. They wanted to get rid of her once and for all. A facility. Her voice came out weak, almost a whisper. "Not just any facility, Mom. A specialized place where people in your condition can have a better life, more suitable." Michael jumped off the bench, fists clenched. "Grandma doesn't need to go anywhere. She stays here with us," the boy shouted. "Michael, stay out of adult conversations," Patricia scolded sharply. "You don't understand these things." "I do understand. Grandma isn't sick, she just can't walk. But her mind works perfectly." Dorothy felt a tear roll down her cheek. It was amazing how a 6-year-old could see what her 45-year-old daughter couldn't. "I want to go home," she said, turning her wheelchair. "Now." The way back was tense and silent. Michael walked beside the wheelchair, holding his grandmother's hand with a grip that seemed to pour all his energy into her. Patricia followed a few steps behind, nervously fiddling with her phone. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. When they reached the small 2-bedroom house on Maple Street, Dorothy asked to be left alone in the living room. She needed to process what had happened. Michael, however, refused to leave her side. "Grandma, can I tell you a secret?" the boy whispered. "Of course, sweetheart." At school, Thursday is Grandparents' Day. All the kids are bringing their grandparents to present in class. "But I don't have a grandpa." Dorothy's chest tightened. Patricia's father had passed away when she was still a teenager, and Robert, her husband, had lost his parents at a very young age. "So the teacher said I could bring you, but now, if you leave..." The boy's voice choked up. "Michael." Dorothy didn't know what to say. "Everyone in class has a grandpa or grandma to bring. Only I don't. They keep saying I'm different, that my family is weird." It was the first time Dorothy had heard about this. Michael was struggling at school and she hadn't even suspected. "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" "Because you were already sad. I didn't want to make you even sadder." At that moment, Dorothy realized she wasn't the only one in the family going through hardships. Her grandson was facing his own battles, and she had been so consumed by her own pain that she couldn't see his suffering. "Michael, I promise I'll go to Grandparents' Day with you." The boy's eyes lit up. "Really promise?" "I promise." They were interrupted by the sound of Robert coming home from work. Her son-in-law greeted Dorothy politely, as always, but she noticed he had been avoiding looking her directly in the eye for weeks. "Robert, you need to talk to Mum about the center," said Patricia, appearing in the room. "Oh, you've already told her. That's great." Robert forced a smile. "Mrs. Williams, you'll love the place. It has a garden, a game room, other people your age." "Other people in my condition, you mean?" Dorothy cut in. Robert swallowed hard. "That's not it, Mom. It's just that here at home, well, Patricia is getting really tired and I work all day. Michael needs attention, he has schoolwork. You deserve a place where you can get proper care." "Proper care," Dorothy repeated the words bitterly. "You mean I'm a burden?" "Of course not," Robert rushed to say. "It's just you two are alone here all day. Patricia barely leaves the house, she has no social life, she can't work." Dorothy turned her chair to face her son-in-law. "Patricia stopped working by choice. I never asked her to." "But Mom, how can I work knowing you might need help at any moment?" Patricia finally spoke up. "What if you fall again? What if you get sick? So that's it? You want to get rid of me because I've become an inconvenience?" "It's not like that, Mom." Patricia raised her voice. "You have no idea what it's like to live in fear all the time, to wake up in the middle of the night to check if you're breathing, to give up your own life to take care of someone who doesn't even try to get better." The silence that followed was sharp. Michael looked fearfully at the adults, not fully understanding the argument, but knowing something very serious was happening. "Try to get better?" Dorothy's voice was heavy with pain. "You think I don't want to walk? That I chose to be like this? That's not what I meant." "That's exactly what you meant, Patricia. You think if I tried harder, if I did more physical therapy, if I were more optimistic, I'd magically walk again." Robert tried to intervene. "Mrs. Williams, I think we're all a little worked up. Maybe we should talk when—" "No!" Dorothy slammed her hand on the armrest. "We're settling this now. Patricia, answer me one thing. In all these months, how many times have you asked how I felt? How many times did you care to know if I was scared, if I was sad, if I needed to talk?" Patricia opened her mouth to respond, but realized she had no answer. "The only person in this house who still treats me like a human being is this 6-year-old boy." Dorothy pointed to Michael. "You treat me like a problem to be solved." "Mom, Let me finish. For 50 years I took care of this family. I raised you alone after your father left. I worked morning, noon and night to pay for your education. I stayed awake through all your fevers, took you to the doctor whenever you needed it, comforted you through every breakup." Patricia began to cry. "I know that, Mom. When Robert came into your life, I welcomed him as my own son. When Michael was born, I quit my job to help you. For 6 years I was the nanny, the cook, the cleaner, all for free and with love." Robert lowered his head. "And now, when I need you for the first time in my life, the solution is to send me away, to hide me somewhere where I won't bother anyone anymore." "It's not like that, Mom," Patricia sobbed. "Yes, it is, dear. It's exactly like that. And you know what hurts the most? You didn't even have the courage to talk to me first. You decided everything on your own, as if I were a child who can't have a say in my own life." Michael, who had stayed quiet during the whole argument, suddenly ran off to his room. Everyone heard the door slam. "Now look what we've done," said Robert. "We scared the boy." "No, Robert," said Dorothy, wiping her own tears. "That's not what we did. What we did was show him how a family falls apart when love is replaced by obligation." Patricia moved closer to her mother. "Mom, I'm sorry, I didn't want it to be like this. It's just, I don't know what to do anymore. I feel so lost." "Then why didn't you ask for my help? Why didn't you talk to me about your fears, your struggles? Did you think that because I'm in a wheelchair I also lost the ability to think, to advise, to be there emotionally?" Patricia realized she really had treated her mother as if she'd become a different person after the accident. I guess I did, I'm sorry." Dorothy took a deep breath. "Patricia, I understand that taking care of me isn't easy. I understand you have your own lives, your own dreams. But the solution isn't to send me away. The solution is for us to talk, to find a way to make this work for everyone." "How, Mom?" "I don't know yet, but I know that together we can figure it out. just like we've always gotten through every hardship. Robert cleared his throat. Mrs. Williams, maybe we can cancel the enrollment at the center, at least for now. For now? Dorothy looked at him firmly. Robert, I'll be clear with you. I'm not going to any center unless it's my decision, and right now my decision is to stay here with my family and try to rebuild our relationship. Patricia hugged her mother for the first time in months. Forgive me, Mom. I was so scared, so tired. I forgot you were suffering too. You're forgiven, dear. But now we need to take care of Michael. This whole argument must have really shaken him. Robert went to his son's room and knocked. Michael, can I come in? No answer. Michael, let's talk. Robert turned the knob, but the door was locked from the inside. Michael, open the door, son. I don't want to talk, came the muffled voice of the boy. Why did you lock the door? Because you're sending Grandma away anyway, and I don't want to see her leave. Patricia approached. Michael, sweetheart, no one is sending Grandma away. It was just an argument. It's over now. Liar! I heard you yelling. You don't love Grandma anymore. Dorothy asked Robert to bring her closer to the door. Michael, it's Grandma. Will you open the door for me? There was a long silence, then the sound of the key turning. The door opened slowly, revealing Michael with red, tear-filled eyes. Grandma, you're not leaving, right? No, my love, Grandma is staying right here with you. Michael threw himself into his grandmother's arms, hugging her tightly. I was so scared. You don't need to be afraid, Michael. Sometimes adults argue, but that doesn't mean we stop loving each other. But why does Mom want you to leave? Dorothy looked at Patricia, who was standing in the bedroom doorway. Mom doesn't want me to leave, Michael. Mom is worried about me, and sometimes when we're very worried, we make decisions that aren't the best. Like when I broke the living room vase and tried to hide the pieces under the sofa. Exactly like that. Dorothy smiled for the first time that day. Michael pulled back slightly to look into his grandmother's eyes. Grandma, do you remember what I told you at the park about the mind being stronger than the body? I remember, sweetheart. I really believe that. And I believe if you believe it too, good things will happen. What kind of good things? I don't know yet. But teacher Melissa said that when we have faith and work hard, dreams can come true in ways we can't even imagine. Dorothy kissed her grandson's forehead. You know what, Michael? You might be right. Maybe I've spent all these months focusing on what I've lost instead of what I still have. And what do you still have, Grandma? I have you. I have Mom and Dad Robert. I have a home, food, people who care about me. I have my mind, which works perfectly. I have my hands, which can still do so many things. Michael smiled. And there's Grandparents' Day on Thursday. You're still coming with me, right? Of course I am, my love. I promised, didn't I? Patricia stepped closer, wiping her tears. Mom, I'm really sorry. Truly. I was so focused on the difficulties that I forgot to see the possibilities. Honey, you don't need to apologize. You did what you thought was best. But now we'll do things differently, okay? We'll talk more, share responsibilities, and find a way for me to be useful again. Useful? Mom, you've always been useful, even these past 3 months. How many times has Michael come home from school and run straight into your arms? How many times has he preferred your advice over mine? Dorothy reflected on her daughter's words. It was true. Even in the wheelchair, she was still an important presence in her grandson's life. Maybe I need to stop focusing on what I can't do and start valuing what I still can do, she said. That's right, Grandma, Michael clapped, and I'll help you figure out lots of things you can still do. Robert entered the room. Mrs. Williams, I want to apologize too. I should have talked to you before supporting the idea of the clinic. It was disrespectful. Robert, you're a good man. I know you care about me too. But next time, let's all talk together before making any decisions, okay? Deal. Michael suddenly jumped up from the wheelchair. I have an idea. What if we made a list of things Grandma can still do? That way, when she feels sad, we can remind her of all those things. Patricia smiled. That's a great idea, Michael. Shall we do it? They went to the living room and Michael ran to get paper and a pencil. For the next hour, The whole family helped create the list. "Things Grandma Dorothy can still do," Michael wrote in his childlike handwriting. "Can cook while sitting," Patricia dictated. "Can help me with homework," Michael added. "Can give advice," said Robert. "Can tell stories," Michael continued. "Can sew," Patricia remembered. "Can take care of the balcony plants," Robert added. The list grew longer, and Dorothy was surprised to realize how many things she really could still do. Over those 3 months, she had focused so much on her limitations that she had completely forgotten about the possibilities. "You know what else I can do?" she said, taking the pencil from Michael's hand. "Can I go to Grandparents' Day and tell all your classmates how proud I am of my grandson?" Michael jumped for joy. "Yes. And I can tell you everything I'm learning at school. Teacher Melissa taught us so much about how the brain works and how we can train our minds to be stronger." "What kind of things?" Dorothy Williams asked, intrigued. "She said we can do exercises for the mind, just like exercises for the body, and that when we really believe in something and work hard for it, the brain helps the body respond better." Patricia and Robert exchanged glances. The conversation was taking an interesting turn. "Michael, did your teacher say anything else about that?" Patricia asked. "Yes. She said she knows people who learn to do new things even after getting sick or hurt, and that the most important thing is to never stop trying." Dorothy felt something stir in her chest, a small flame of hope she had tried to extinguish these past few months. "Michael, do you think I should talk to your teacher?" "Yes, she knows so much, and she also works at a gym helping people exercise." "A gym?" Robert perked up. "What kind of gym?" "I'm not sure, but she said they have special equipment for people who can't walk, and exercises to make the mind stronger too." Patricia took her mother's hand. "Mom, what if I set up a talk with Michael's teacher? Not to push you into anything you don't want, just to hear what she has to say." Dorothy hesitated. For 3 months, she had refused any kind of treatment or therapy. The doctor said it was unlikely she'd ever walk again, and she had accepted that as a final sentence. "I don't know, dear. The doctors were very clear about my condition." "Grandma," Michael moved closer to her, "remember how you always told me we should never give up on a dream? That even when things get hard, we have to keep trying?" Dorothy smiled sadly. "I remember, sweetheart. But this is different. Some things really can't be changed." "But Grandma, what if it's not about walking again? What if it's about feeling better, stronger, happier? That would still be good, right?" The wisdom of that 6-year-old boy left Dorothy speechless. Michael was right. Even if she never walked again, that didn't mean she couldn't improve her quality of life, her energy, her outlook. "All right," she said finally. "Let's talk to your teacher." Michael celebrated as if he'd just won the greatest gift in the world. "I'll tell her tomorrow. I'll say Grandma wants to meet her." "Easy, Michael," Patricia laughed. "Let's take it slow. First, I'll call the school, talk to the administration, and set up a proper meeting. Can I come too?" "Of course, sweetheart. It was your idea after all." That night, for the first time in 3 months, Dorothy went to bed with a different feeling in her chest. It wasn't exactly hope yet, but it wasn't the total despair that had followed her since the accident either. The next morning, Michael woke up even more excited than usual. He ate breakfast quickly and ran to say goodbye to his grandmother before leaving for school. "Grandma, today I'll tell Teacher Melissa about our talk. I'm sure she'll be so happy to meet you." "Michael, remember what we said about taking it slow," Patricia said, putting his backpack on his shoulders. "I know, Mom, but I'm just so excited." After Michael left for school and Robert went to work, Patricia sat at the kitchen table with her mother to talk more deeply. "Mom, I wanted to apologize again for what happened yesterday, and I wanted to explain a few things." "Sweetheart, you don't need to explain yourself. I understand it hasn't been easy for you." "But I do, Mom, because I realized I made serious mistakes these past 3 months. I was so focused on taking care of your body, on making sure you were physically safe, that I completely forgot to care for your heart, your mind." Dorothy held her daughter's hand. "Patricia, you did the best you could in the situation." "No, Mom, I could have done much better. I could have asked how you were feeling, what you needed beyond physical help. I could have kept talking to you about things other than your health condition. That's true, Dorothy admitted. These past few months, it feels like we've only talked about doctors, medicine, physical therapy, as if I stopped being a whole person. Exactly. And I contributed to that. I treated you like your entire identity had been reduced to the wheelchair. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, back to the story. They were interrupted by the ringing of the phone. Patricia answered. Hello? Oh, good morning. Yes, I'm Michael's mother. What? He did what? Dorothy realized something was happening at the school. All right, I'll come over to talk. Can you keep him in the office, thank you? Patricia hung up with a worried expression. What happened? Dorothy asked. Michael, well, it seems he told his whole class about our conversation yesterday, and about you wanting to meet his teacher. Now all the kids are asking to meet you too. Really? The principal said his teacher, Melissa, wants to talk to us today if possible, and that Michael put together some kind of presentation about you for the class. Dorothy didn't know whether to laugh or be concerned. That boy? What kind of presentation? I don't know yet. We'll have to go and find out. An hour later, Dorothy was at the entrance of Professor William Johnson Elementary School, trying to steady her nerves. It was the first time she'd left the house for something other than a doctor's appointment or physical therapy since the accident. Mom, are you okay? Patricia asked, pushing the wheelchair. I'm nervous, Dorothy admitted. It's been so long since I've talked to strangers. Let's take it slow. If you want to leave at any point, just tell me. They were greeted by the principal, a kind woman in her 50s named Rebecca. Mrs. Williams, what a pleasure to meet you. Michael talks about you so much. He's a very special boy. Thank you. He's very special to me too. Come, Teacher Melissa is waiting in the faculty room, and I should warn you, the kids are very excited to meet Michael's grandmother. Rebecca led them through the school halls. Dorothy took in everything carefully, the drawings on the walls, the familiar school smell, the sound of children in classrooms. How long had it been since she'd paid attention to these little details of everyday life? Melissa, this is Mrs. Williams and her daughter Patricia, Rebecca introduced. Teacher Melissa was a young woman in her 30s with a warm smile and eyes full of energy. Mrs. Williams, it's such a pleasure to meet you. Michael talks about you every day. He loves you so much. The pleasure is mine. Michael told me you teach very interesting things about the mind and body. Oh yes, I have a degree in physical education and a specialization in adapted physical activity. Besides teaching here, I also work at a rehabilitation clinic. Patricia perked up. What kind of clinic? It's a rehab center that works with people who have different kinds of physical limitations. We have physical therapists, occupational therapists, psychologists, and we also offer adapted physical activities. And does it really work? Asked Dorothy. Mrs. Williams, can I be honest with you? Please. It works, but not in the way most people expect. Most of our patients don't regain the ability to walk or return to the exact physical condition they had before, but everyone significantly improves their quality of life, independence, mood, self-esteem. Dorothy appreciated the teacher's honesty. And how does that happen? Through various approaches, exercises to strengthen the muscles that still function, activities to improve balance and coordination, breathing techniques, meditation, psychological work, and also a lot of purposeful work. Purpose? Yes. It's essential for the person to find new reasons to get out of bed every day, new goals, new ways to feel useful and fulfilled. Dorothy felt the teacher was speaking exactly about what she had lost, her sense of purpose. Michael told me you mentioned the mind being stronger than the body. What exactly does that mean? Melissa brightened up. It's one of the foundations of our work, Mrs. Williams. Obviously, the mind can't perform physical miracles, but it can perform psychological and emotional ones, which in turn greatly influence the body. How so? For example, when a person believes they can improve, they commit more to exercises, follow medical advice better, eat better, sleep better. All of this contributes to better physical results. And when the person doesn't believe, then the opposite happens. The person puts in less effort, takes less care of themselves, and the results are worse. It's like they create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Dorothy reflected on the teacher's words. For 3 months, she had lived exactly that negative prophecy. Convinced nothing could improve, she truly hadn't improved at all. "Teacher, can I ask a question?" Patricia interrupted. "Is it possible to reverse this process? I mean, if someone has spent months thinking negatively, is there still time to change?" "Of course there is. The human brain is incredibly resilient. It can form new connections, new thought patterns at any age. Obviously, the sooner you start, the better, but it's never too late." "And where do you start?" "With small goals. It's no use for someone who hasn't exercised in months to want to run a marathon in the first week. We start with small, achievable goals and gradually increase them." Dorothy leaned forward in her chair. "What kind of small goals?" "It depends on the person and their condition. It could be brushing their teeth independently, transferring from the bed to the wheelchair without help, preparing a simple meal. Practical, everyday things." "Exactly. And as the person achieves these small goals, their confidence grows. Their mood improves and they become more motivated for bigger goals." Patricia took her mother's hand. "Mum, what do you think?" Dorothy stayed silent for a moment, processing everything she had heard. "Teacher Melissa, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Why did you choose to work with this? It must be emotionally difficult." Melissa smiled. "I chose it because I saw my own grandmother go through something similar to what you're experiencing. She had a stroke at 70, was left with some limitations, and I saw how she went from a happy, active person to a bitter, depressed one." "And did she manage to overcome it?" "She did, but it took almost 2 years, and only because a very special physical therapist managed to motivate her to try again. From then on, I decided I wanted to help others not waste as much time as she did." Dorothy felt an immediate connection with the teacher. "And your grandmother, did she start walking again?" "Not completely. She still uses a cane and has some difficulties, but she started cooking again, leaving the house, having a social life. She started smiling again, and for my family that was far more important than her walking perfectly." At that moment, there was a knock at the door. It was Rebecca, the coordinator. "Melissa, sorry to interrupt, but the kids are really excited. Can I bring Michael in to talk with you?" "Of course," said Melissa. Michael rushed into the room and threw himself into his grandmother's lap. "Grandma, you really came." He was beaming with happiness. "Yes, my love, and I'm really enjoying talking to your teacher. She's amazing, right? She knows everything about keeping your mind strong." "Michael," said Melissa, "did you tell your grandma about your presentation?" "Presentation?" Dorothy looked at her grandson. Michael turned red. "Well, I told the whole class about you, Grandma, and how smart you are, and how you know how to do so many things, so everyone wanted to meet you." "Michael, what exactly did you tell your classmates?" asked Patricia. "I said my grandma is the wisest person I know, that she teaches me so much, tells the best stories in the world, makes the best food." Dorothy was moved. "And I also said some adults wanted to send her away because they thought she wasn't good for anything anymore since she's in a wheelchair, but I was going to prove them wrong." Patricia was embarrassed. "Michael." "It's okay, dear," said Dorothy. "He didn't lie." "And then," Michael continued, "everyone in class was outraged. Julia said she has an uncle who also uses a wheelchair and he's an engineer. Peter said he has a neighbor who uses a wheelchair and she's an artist." Melissa smiled. "Kids have such a clear view of these things, don't they?" "And then," Michael went on, getting more excited, "I got the idea to do a presentation about you, Grandma, to show everyone how special you are." "What kind of presentation, Michael?" "Oh, Grandma, it's a surprise, but I can tell you there are drawings, a list of your best qualities, and even a song I made up about you." Dorothy laughed for the first time in a long while. "A song about me?" "Yeah. Want to hear it?" "Michael, maybe it's better to save it for the official presentation," Melissa suggested. "Okay, but Grandma, you're coming to watch, right? It's on Thursday, Grandparents' Day." "Of course I am, my love." Rebecca reappeared at the door. "Everyone, the kids are really eager. How about we do a little preview of the presentation now, just so Mrs. Dorothy can meet the class? Michael jumped with joy. Can we, Grandma, please? Dorothy looked at Patricia, who nodded. Yes, Michael. They all went to the first grade classroom. Dorothy was amazed by the kids' welcome. As soon as she entered, they all started clapping and shouting, "Hi, Michael's grandma." "Everyone settle down," said Melissa. "Let's welcome Michael's grandma politely." A girl named Anna Claire approached the wheelchair. "Michael's grandma, is it true you know how to make dulce de leche?" "Yes, it's true." "And that you taught Michael how to make a kite?" "That's true too." A boy named Charles asked, "And is it true you have lots of stories to tell?" "I sure do. Do you like stories?" "We love them," all the kids shouted. "Then how about I tell you a story right now?" Michael was thrilled. "Grandma, would you really?" "Of course, my love. It's been a while since I told stories to an audience like this." And there in that classroom, Dorothy did something she hadn't done in months. She felt useful again. She told the children the story of the frog and the prince, using different voices and dramatic gestures. The kids were completely mesmerized. When she finished, they all clapped enthusiastically. "Tell another one! Tell another one!" they shouted. "I'll tell more on Thursday," promised Dorothy, "on Grandparents' Day." After they left the school and got in the car, Patricia and Dorothy sat in silence for a while. "How did you feel in there, Mom?" "I felt alive. It's been a long time since I've felt that way. Teacher Melissa really seems to know a lot about this." "That's true. And you know what impressed me the most? How the children treated me. They didn't see me as limited or incapable. They saw me as Michael's grandma, as a normal person." "Because that's what you are, Mom. A normal person who happens to use a wheelchair." Dorothy reflected on those words. For 3 months, she had defined herself first by her disability, and only then by everything else. The children did the opposite. They saw her first as a person, and the wheelchair was just a secondary detail. "Patricia, I'd like to talk more with Teacher Melissa. Maybe visit that clinic where she works." "Are you sure, Mom?" "I am. Not necessarily for treatment, but to better understand my options, to see if there's anything I can do to feel better, more useful. I'll call her tomorrow." When they got home, Robert was already there, playing with Michael in the backyard. "How was school?" he asked. "It was amazing, Dad," Michael ran to tell him. "Grandma told a story to the whole class, and everyone loved it." "Really?" Robert looked surprised at Dorothy. "It was wonderful, Robert. It's been a long time since I've had that much fun." "And the teacher?" he asked Patricia. "Very interesting. Tomorrow I'll call to schedule a visit at the clinic where she works." Robert walked over to Dorothy. "Mrs. Williams, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "I wanted to apologize again for what happened yesterday, and I wanted to say, well, seeing you today after school, I noticed a difference." "What kind of difference?" "You seem more lively. There's a spark in your eyes I haven't seen in months." Dorothy smiled. "I do feel more lively, Robert. For the first time in a long while, I feel like there might still be good things ahead." "And there are, Grandma," Michael chimed in. "Tomorrow I'm going to research a bunch of things you can do. I'll use the school computer." "What kind of things, Michael?" "Things people in wheelchairs do. Sports, jobs, hobbies. I'm sure there's lots of cool stuff." Patricia hugged her son. "Such a smart boy. Where did you learn to research on the computer?" "Teacher Melissa taught me. She said the internet has information about everything." That night at dinner, the atmosphere at home was completely different. For the first time in months, they talked about things other than Dorothy's condition. Michael talked about math class, Robert shared about a work project, and Patricia mentioned a new recipe she wanted to try. "Mom, tomorrow I'd like to try making that carrot cake you always used to bake," said Patricia. "I can teach you, dear. In fact, I can do it with you. Teacher Melissa said cooking is a great activity for someone in a wheelchair." "Really, you want to cook?" "Yes, I do. It's been 3 months since I've kneaded dough. It's about time I got back to it." Michael clapped his hands. "Can I help too?" "Of course you can, sweetheart. It'll be our first family activity in a long time." Robert smiled. "Mrs. Williams, can I confess something? I've missed your sweets. No one makes fudge like you. Then, tomorrow, we'll make carrot cake and fudge." That night, Dorothy went to bed with a feeling she had almost forgotten existed. Anticipation for the next day. For the first time in 3 months, she was eager to wake up and do something. The next morning, she woke up earlier than usual and went straight to the kitchen. She wanted to organize the ingredients and figure out the best way to adapt the recipe to make while seated. Patricia appeared shortly after, surprised to find her mother already awake. "Mom, are you okay? You're up early today." "I'm great, honey. I felt like starting our cooking project right away." "That's wonderful. I'll make some coffee and we can begin." Michael arrived for breakfast and was thrilled to see his grandmother in the kitchen. "Grandma, you're really going to cook?" "Yes, I am, sweetheart. And you're going to be my official assistant." "Cool. Can I wear Mommy's apron?" "Of course you can." They spent the whole morning cooking together. Dorothy discovered that with a few simple adjustments, she could do almost everything she used to. Patricia moved higher ingredients to lower shelves. Michael helped by reaching things, and Robert adjusted the table height to make it more comfortable for the wheelchair. "Mum, the cake tastes just like the one you always made," Patricia said, tasting the batter. "That's because the recipe is still in my head, dear. And my hands haven't forgotten either." "Grandma," Michael said, his face smeared with batter, "can I take a piece of cake for my teacher, Melissa?" "Of course you can, sweetheart." When Robert came over for lunch, the house was filled with that homemade smell he hadn't experienced in months. "Wow, what a wonderful smell," he exclaimed. "Grandma made cake and fudge," Michael announced proudly. "And how was the experience, Mrs. Williams?" "It was wonderful, Robert. I felt really good cooking again." It's funny how we forget the simple things that bring us joy. In the afternoon, Patricia called Melissa to schedule the visit to the clinic. "Melissa? It's Patricia, Michael's mum." "Hi, how are you? Listen, my mother would love to see the clinic where you work." "No, that's great. Tomorrow morning works perfectly." "Thank you." When she hung up, she turned to her mother. "Mom, it's set for tomorrow at 10 in the morning. She said she'll introduce you to the team and show you around." "I'm nervous," Dorothy admitted. "Why, Mom? What if they say there's nothing that can be done? What if they confirm that I'm really beyond help?" Michael, who had been listening, walked over to his grandmother. "Grandma, remember what you always tell me when I'm scared of something?" "What's that, sweetheart?" "That we only find out if we can or can't do something when we try. And even if we don't succeed, we always learn something by trying." Dorothy hugged her grandson. "You're right, Michael. I'll try." "And I'll go with you," the boy said. "Michael, you have school tomorrow," Patricia reminded him. "But Mom, I want to be there when Grandma sees the place." Dorothy looked at her daughter. "Patricia, what if we took him anyway? I'm sure Melissa wouldn't mind. And it would be nice to have my official assistant with me." "All right, Mom, if you want him to go." "I do. Michael was the one who gave me the strength to try again. It's only fair he's there." That night, Michael was so excited about the next day's outing that he could barely eat dinner. "Grandma, what if they have a pool there? Do you know how to swim?" "Yes, I do, sweetheart. I learned when I was young." "What if they have exercise equipment? Will you want to try it?" "We'll see, Michael. One step at a time." "What if there are other nice people like you?" Dorothy smiled. "It would be wonderful to meet others going through similar situations." Robert joined the conversation. "Mrs. Williams, can I come too? I don't need to stay the whole time, but I'd like to see the place, understand how it works." "Of course, Robert. It would be nice to have the whole family together." Patricia got emotional. "Mum, it's been so long since we've all gone out together." "That's true, sweetheart. And maybe it's time we start doing these things again." Michael clapped his hands. "Can I call it the Hope outing?" Everyone laughed. "You can call it whatever you want, my love," said Dorothy. The next morning, the whole family got ready to go to the New Hope Rehabilitation Center. Michael was wearing his Sunday best and carried a drawing he had made for his teacher, Melissa. "What did you draw, Michael?" Patricia asked in the car. "It's Grandma teaching a bunch of things to a bunch of people, because I'm sure she'll find a way to help others too." Dorothy looked at the drawing and was moved. Michael had drawn her in a wheelchair, but surrounded by smiling people, with speech bubbles full of hearts. It's beautiful, my love. When they arrived at the rehabilitation center, Dorothy was impressed by the facility. It was a modern building with ramps, well-kept gardens, and a welcoming atmosphere. Melissa greeted them at the reception. "How wonderful that you all came," she smiled. "Michael, did you bring something for me?" "I did." Michael handed her the drawing. "It's Grandma in the future." Melissa examined the drawing carefully. "It's beautiful, Michael, and you know what? You might be right. Many people who come here end up helping others." "How so?" Dorothy asked. "Let me show you. Come with me." Melissa led them through the center's facilities. There was an adapted swimming pool, a physical therapy room with modern equipment, an occupational therapy room, a library, a computer lab, and even an experimental kitchen. "This kitchen is really interesting," Melissa explained. "Here, patients learn to cook in ways adapted to their condition, and many discover they can still make the recipes they always have, just in different ways." Dorothy was immediately intrigued. "What kind of adaptations?" "It depends on each person's limitations. For wheelchair users, we adjust counter heights, reorganize utensils, teach safe transfer techniques. Often, small changes make all the difference." "And does it work?" "It works very well. We have a lady here, Mrs. Catherine, who after learning these techniques started teaching cooking classes for other patients. Now she has a group of 15 people who meet every week to cook together." Michael got excited. "Grandma, you could do that too. You cook way better than anyone." "Easy there, Michael," Dorothy laughed. "First, I need to learn these new techniques." "But are you interested?" Melissa asked. "Yes, I am. Yesterday I cooked for the first time after the accident, and it felt really good." "That's wonderful. Did it turn out well?" "It tasted just like it always does," Patricia said. "We even brought a piece of the cake for you to try." Melissa tasted the cake Michael had brought. "Wow, this is delicious. Mrs. Williams, you really have a special talent." "Thank you. I've always loved cooking." "Would you like to start cooking regularly again?" "I'd love to, but I'm afraid I won't be able to do everything I used to." "Let's take a look at the experimental kitchen. I'm sure you'll be surprised by the possibilities." They spent an hour in the experimental kitchen, and Dorothy was amazed by the adaptations. Adjustable counters, special utensils, ovens with side openings, refrigerators with drawers at the perfect height. "It's incredible how small adjustments can make such a big difference," Robert remarked. "Exactly," Melissa said. "In fact, many of these adaptations are useful for anyone, not just those with physical limitations." A woman approached them. It was Mrs. Catherine, the one Melissa had mentioned. "Melissa, are these the visitors you mentioned?" "Yes." "Mrs. Catherine, this is Mrs. Dorothy and her family." Catherine approached Dorothy with a warm smile. "Dorothy, what a pleasure. Melissa told me you're a wonderful cook." "Thank you. And you're the one who teaches cooking classes here." "That's right. It started as therapy for myself, but it turned into an even greater passion." "How so?" "Well, I had a stroke 2 years ago. I lost some mobility in my right arm and had trouble with balance. I thought I'd never be able to cook again." "And you did?" "I did. But even better, I discovered that teaching others to overcome the same challenges brings me more joy than cooking alone at home ever did." Dorothy was intrigued by Catherine's story. "How did you start teaching?" "First, I learned adapted techniques here at the center. Then I began cooking for other patients just for fun. Eventually, I realized many people wanted to learn what I was learning." "And Melissa let you form the group?" "Not only allowed it, she encouraged it. Now we meet every Wednesday. We've taught over 50 people since we started." Michael tugged his grandmother's sleeve. "Grandma, you could do this too." Catherine smiled at the boy. "What a clever grandson." "He's right, Dorothy. If you have a talent for cooking and enjoy teaching, it could be a perfect match." "But I've never taught cooking before." "Neither had I," Catherine laughed. "I learned by doing. And Melissa and the team here helped me a lot in the beginning." Melissa stepped closer. "Mrs. Dorothy, how about you come a few times just to observe Catherine's classes? No pressure, just to see how it works." Dorothy hesitated. "I don't know. I'm still getting used to leaving the house." "Mom," Patricia said, You don't have to decide anything today. How about we think it over at home and talk about it? That's a great idea, Melissa agreed. Mrs. Dorothy, there's no rush. The important thing is that you know the door is open whenever you're ready. Catherine took Dorothy's hand. Can I tell you something? When I first came here, I was exactly like you, unsure, afraid, thinking I couldn't do anything right. What changed? I realized I was only focusing on what I'd lost instead of what I still had. And I discovered that sometimes, when you lose something, you gain things you never even knew existed. How so? Before the stroke, I only cooked for my family. It was nice, but it was routine. Now, every time I teach someone to make a recipe they thought they'd never cook again, I feel a joy I'd never felt before. Dorothy fell silent, absorbing Catherine's words. Grandma, Michael said, you always taught me that when we help others, we feel better too, remember? I do, sweetheart. So if you teach others to cook, you'll feel better too. The boy's simple logic made sense to Dorothy. Michael's right, Robert said. Mrs. Dorothy, you've always been a very generous person. Maybe this is a way to keep being generous, just in a different way. Melissa showed them the rest of the facilities, and Dorothy was impressed by the variety of activities available. There were painting classes, reading groups, craft workshops, even a choir. Is there anything you've always wanted to try but never had the chance to? Melissa asked. Dorothy thought for a moment. I've always wanted to learn to paint, but I thought I had no talent. We have a wonderful painting teacher here. She works with people of all ages and skill levels. And people in wheelchairs, can they paint normally? Absolutely. Actually, some of our best artists use wheelchairs. Michael started jumping with excitement. Grandma, you could learn to paint and cook, and then teach other people too. Dorothy laughed at her grandson's enthusiasm. Easy there, Michael. One thing at a time. Catherine approached again. Dorothy, can I make a suggestion? Of course. How about coming next Wednesday just to watch our cooking class? You don't have to participate, just observe. And if you don't like it, you can leave. No pressure. Dorothy looked at her family, who were all nodding in agreement. All right, I'll come next Wednesday. Michael let out a joyful shout and hugged his grandmother. Grandma, you're the bravest person in the world. On the way home, the family talked about the visit. What did you all think? Dorothy asked. I thought it was amazing, Mom, said Patricia. The place is so welcoming, and the people there seem really happy. And that Miss Catherine is so kind, added Robert. You can tell she loves what she does. Grandma, Michael said, are you going to be like her? All happy and teaching everyone things? I don't know, Michael, but I hope so. That night, Dorothy went to bed thinking about her conversation with Catherine. It was true she had lost the use of her legs, but maybe there were things to be gained that she hadn't discovered yet. On Tuesday, Michael came home from school more excited than usual. Grandma, guess what? I told my whole class about our visit to the rehab center, and everyone wants you to go there and teach cooking too. Michael, I don't even know if I'll be able to, but I know you will. And you know why? Because you're the best cook in the world, and because you love helping people. Patricia walked over. Mom, how are you feeling about tomorrow? Nervous, but curious too. I want to see how these classes work. And if you don't like it, then I'll just leave. At least I'll have tried. On Wednesday morning, Dorothy woke up early and took extra care getting ready. She wanted to make a good first impression. Mom, you look beautiful, said Patricia. Are you ready? I think so. Michael, do you want to come with me? Yes, but promise you'll tell me everything that happens. I promise, sweetheart. When they arrived at the rehab center, Catherine was waiting at the reception. Dorothy, I'm so glad you came. Thank you for inviting me, Catherine. Come on, I'll introduce you to the group. The class took place in the demo kitchen, with 8 people participating, 4 men and 4 women of various ages, all with different physical limitations. Everyone, this is Dorothy, the one I told you about, Catherine introduced. She's here to observe today's class. They all greeted Dorothy warmly, and she immediately felt welcome. Today we're making lasagna, Catherine explained. Has anyone never made lasagna before? 2 people raised their hands. Perfect. Dorothy, Have you made lasagna before? Yes, many times. Great. Maybe you can share some tips too. The class flowed naturally and casually. Catherine was truly a good teacher, patient and clear. And Dorothy realized she had slowly started offering suggestions and sharing techniques. Dorothy, that tip about making the sauce a little thicker is excellent, said a man named John. I'd never thought of that. It's because if the lasagna is too wet, it doesn't hold its shape when you cut it, Dorothy explained. Wow, you really know your cooking, remarked a woman named Rose. I've been cooking for over 50 years, Dorothy smiled. Catherine came over to her. Dorothy, can I ask you something? How did you learn to cook so well? I learned from my mother, who learned from her mother. And then I just kept practicing, experimenting, making mistakes and getting it right. And did you enjoy teaching your daughter? I loved it. Some of my fondest memories are of Patricia and me cooking together when she was little. A young woman named Letitia approached. Dorothy, could you teach me how to make the carrot cake my grandmother used to make? She passed away last year, and I've never been able to make it quite like hers. Dorothy felt a lump in her throat. Of course I can, my dear. In fact, I have a carrot cake recipe I learned from my mother 40 years ago. Really? Could you teach us? I'd be happy to, if Catherine doesn't mind. Catherine smiled. Not only do I not mind, but I'd love to learn too. How about you be our guest teacher next week? Dorothy felt a mix of joy and nervousness. Do you really think I could? Absolutely. You have the knowledge, patience, and passion for what you do. That's everything a good teacher needs. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us newcomers a lot. Now, back to the story. At the end of the class, after everyone had tasted the lasagna they'd made together, the group gathered to chat. Dorothy, said John, can I ask you a personal question? Of course. How long have you been using a wheelchair? 3.5 months. Everyone looked surprised. Really? Said Rose. You seem so, adjusted. To be honest, Dorothy admitted, just last week I was feeling very depressed, thinking my life was over. What changed? Letitia asked. My 6-year-old grandson. He told me the mind is stronger than the body and that I couldn't give up on living. The group fell silent, absorbing Dorothy's words. You know, John said, I've been in a wheelchair for 5 years, and there are still days I forget about it. But you, who've been at it for such a short time, seem to have an acceptance that took me years to find. I think everyone moves at their own pace, Dorothy reflected. And I've been very lucky to have people around me who reminded me what truly matters. Catherine took Dorothy's hand. Dorothy, can I confess something? Watching you interact with everyone today, I realized you have a natural gift for teaching. You think so? I'm sure of it. You explain things clearly, you're patient, you care whether people understand, and most importantly, you do it with love. I've always enjoyed sharing knowledge. When Patricia was little, I loved teaching her things. And now you can teach so many more people, Rose said. Dorothy, would you really come back next week to teach us carrot cake? If you really want me to, we do, the group chorused. When Patricia and Michael came to pick her up, Dorothy was beaming. How was it, Grandma? Michael asked eagerly. It was wonderful, sweetheart. And guess what? Next week, I'm going to teach them how to make carrot cake. Michael jumped for joy. I knew it. I knew you could do it. How was it, Mom? Patricia asked. Honey, it was one of the best mornings I've had in a long time. I felt useful again, capable. And the people? Were they nice? So kind. And you know what? They all have incredible stories of overcoming challenges. I felt inspired. On the way home, Dorothy shared every detail of the class with her family. And Catherine told me I have a natural talent for teaching, she said, still a bit in disbelief. Of course you do, Mom, Patricia said. You've always been a great teacher. Remember all the life lessons you taught me? It's true, Grandma, Michael added. You taught me how to tie my shoes, ride a bike, make a kite. You're the best teacher in the world." Robert, who was driving, glanced in the rearview mirror. "Mrs. Williams, I'm so proud of you. Seeing the change in you these past few days." "What kind of change, Robert?" "You've started smiling for real again." The sparkle in her eyes had returned. She was once again the Dorothy I knew when I first started dating Patricia. Dorothy got emotional. "Robert, thank you for everything, for supporting me through these difficult months, for never giving up on me. Mrs. Williams, you're part of my family. I'd never give up on you." When they got home, Dorothy went straight to the kitchen. "What are you going to do, Mom?" "I'm going to test the carrot cake recipe I'll be teaching next week. I want to make sure it's perfect." "Can I help?" asked Michael. "Of course you can, my official assistant." They spent the whole afternoon testing and adjusting the recipe. Dorothy made small notes, thinking of the best way to explain each step to people who might have never baked a cake before. "Grandma, you look like a real teacher," Michael observed. "What do you mean?" "You're writing everything down so carefully, explaining each part, just like the teachers at school do," Dorothy laughed. "I just want everything to be perfect next week, Michael." That evening, during dinner, the family talked about their plans for the next few days. "Mom, Thursday is Grandparents' Day at Michael's school," Patricia reminded her. "That's right. I'm so excited." "Grandma, are you going to tell my classmates about your new cooking school?" asked Michael. "New cooking school?" Dorothy chuckled. "Yeah, the rehab center where you're going to teach." "Michael, it's too early to call it a school." "But Grandma, you're going to teach people, they'll learn, you'll have students. It is a school." Robert laughed. "The boy's right, Mrs. Williams. It's an unconventional school, but it's a school." "And can I visit your cooking school?" Michael asked. "Of course you can, sweetheart, whenever you want." That night, Dorothy went to bed, thinking about how much her life had changed in just a week. From feeling useless and without purpose, she was becoming someone who had reasons to get out of bed every day again. On Thursday, the day of the event at Michael's school, Dorothy woke up especially excited. She had picked out a nice outfit and prepared some special stories to tell the children. "Grandma, you look beautiful," Michael said when he saw her all dressed up. "Thank you, sweetheart. I'm nervous, but also very happy." "Why nervous? It's been a long time since I've spoken to a big group of children. But Grandma, you're so good at telling stories, and the kids are going to love you." When they arrived at the school, Michael ran ahead to introduce his grandmother to all his classmates. "Everyone, this is my grandma, the one I told you about." The children gathered around Dorothy, curious and excited. "Michael's grandma, is it true you're going to have a cooking school?" asked Anna Claire. "How did you know about that?" Dorothy looked surprised at Michael. "Michael told us," said Charles. "He said you're going to teach people how to cook delicious things, and that you're going to make a lot of people happy," Julia added. Dorothy was moved by the children's enthusiasm. "Well, it's true, I'll be teaching some people." "That's so cool," the kids cheered. Teacher Melissa approached. "Mrs. Williams, Michael told us about your experience at the rehab center. It's wonderful to see how things have progressed. Melissa, thank you for everything. If you hadn't talked to us, none of this would have happened." "Actually, Mrs. Williams, you made it all happen. I just showed you the possibilities. The courage to try was all yours." Michael's presentation to the class was touching. He had prepared an album with photos of his grandmother from when she was young to the present day. For each photo, he had a story to tell. "This is my grandma when she was 20, Michael showed them. "She was so pretty, right? And look how she smiles. This is when she married my grandpa. They stayed married for a long time until my grandpa passed away. This is when my mommy was born. My grandma raised mommy all by herself because she was very brave. And this is my grandma teaching me how to make a kite when I was 4. She always teaches me cool things." The children paid attention to every detail, asking questions and making comments. "Michael, has your grandma always lived in our town?" asked Peter. "Always. She knows so many stories about the town, from when it didn't even have half the houses it does now." "Mrs. Dorothy," said Anna Claire, "could you tell us a story about the town?" "Of course I can, my dear." Dorothy spent the next half hour telling the children what the town was like when she was young, how the streets were different, how people lived without TV and the internet, how they played outside without fear. The kids were fascinated. "Wow, Michael's grandma, what a different time," Julia remarked. "It really was different, sweetheart. Some things were harder, others were simpler." "And do you miss those days?" asked Charles. "I do miss some things, yes, but I also like many things we have now. What matters is making the most of the time we're living in." Michael moved closer to his grandmother. "Grandma, can you tell them about how the mind is stronger than the body?" Michael, "Please, Grandma. They'll love hearing it." Dorothy looked at the children, who were all listening intently. "Well, recently I learned that our mind really can be stronger than our body. When I had my accident and ended up in a wheelchair, I thought my life was over. I was so sad, so discouraged." "And what happened?" asked Anna Claire. "Michael reminded me that my mind still worked perfectly, and that I could use it to find new ways to be happy and useful." "And did it work?" Peter asked. "It did. This week I started teaching cooking to people who, like me, have some physical limitations, and I realized I can still be just as useful as I always was, just in a different way." The kids were amazed. "Michael's grandma," Julia said. "You're so smart." "And so brave," added Charles. "Thank you, kids. But you know what helped me the most? Remembering that we always have people who love us around us, and those people give us the strength to keep trying." Michael threw himself into his grandma's lap. "I love you so much, Grandma." "I love you too, sweetheart. And I thank you for helping me remember what's truly important." At the end of the event, several other grandmothers came up to Dorothy to talk. "Dorothy, your story is so inspiring," said a woman named Helen. "My husband had a stroke last year and has been very depressed. Can I tell him your story?" "Of course, Helen, and if he'd like to talk to me, I'd be happy to." "Dorothy," said another grandmother, Nancy, "where is that rehab center you mentioned? I have a friend who might be interested." Dorothy spent the next few minutes giving information and sharing her experience with other grandmothers who had similar situations in their families. "Mum, you've become some kind of counselor," Patricia joked. "It's funny, dear. It seems that when you go through something hard and overcome it, people start coming to you for advice." On the way home, Michael was thrilled. "Grandma, you were the best grandma at the whole Grandparents' Day. Everyone loved you." "Thank you, sweetheart. I had a wonderful time too." "And did you see how all the other grandmas were interested in your story?" "You're famous," Dorothy laughed. "I don't know about famous, Michael, but it's nice to know our story can help others." "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Of course, love." "Do you still feel sad sometimes because you can't walk?" Dorothy Williams thought about her grandson's question. "Sometimes I do, Michael, especially when I remember things I used to love doing that are harder now." "Like what?" "Like dancing, for example. I loved dancing with your grandfather." Michael grew thoughtful. "But Grandma, maybe you can dance in a different way, right? With the wheelchair." Dorothy looked at her grandson in surprise. "What do you mean, Michael?" "I don't know. But if you can cook in a different way, maybe you can dance in a different way too." Patricia turned from the front seat. "Michael's right, Mom. There must be adapted dancing for wheelchair users." "You think so?" "Let's look it up," Michael suggested. That evening at home, Michael asked Robert to help him search online for wheelchair dancing. To everyone's surprise, they found plenty of videos and information. "Grandma, look!" Michael called Dorothy over to the computer. "There are so many people who dance in wheelchairs, and it's beautiful." Dorothy watched the videos with emotion. It really was possible to dance, and some performances were stunning. "It's amazing, Michael. I never imagined this existed." "And look, Grandma, there are classes right here in our city, really close to the rehab center." Patricia stepped closer. "Mom, would you like to try?" "I don't know. It might be too much all at once." "Grandma," Michael said, "remember how you taught me we should always try new things? That's how we grow." Dorothy smiled. "You're right, sweetheart. Maybe I can at least see how it works." "Should I call to ask about the classes?" Patricia offered. "Yes, dear." Robert joined them. "Mrs. Williams, can I say something?" "Of course, Robert." Seeing you these past few days reminded me why I fell in love with Patricia. She got your courage to face challenges, your willingness to start over when needed. Dorothy was moved. Robert, thank you. That means so much to me. And Mom, Patricia added, Robert's right. You've always been my example of strength. Seeing how you're handling this makes me even prouder to be your daughter. Michael hugged his grandmother. Grandma, you're my hero. And you all are my strength, my loves. Without you, I'd never have gotten out of bed again. The following week, Dorothy had two important commitments: her first cooking class as a teacher and a visit to the adapted dance classes. On Tuesday, she spent the whole day preparing materials for the carrot cake lesson. She made detailed notes, gathered all the ingredients, and even drew diagrams to explain techniques. Mom, you're more nervous about teaching than you were about learning, Patricia observed. It's just that the responsibility is mine now, dear. I want everyone to learn properly. Grandma, Michael said, coming home from school, can I make a suggestion? Of course, sweetheart. What if you brought some slices of the finished cake? That way, if someone makes a mistake, they can taste how it's supposed to turn out. Dorothy smiled. That's a wonderful idea, Michael. I'll do that. Wednesday morning, Dorothy was anxious but confident. She had prepared well and was excited to share her knowledge. When she arrived at the rehab center, Catherine greeted her enthusiastically. Dorothy, we're all looking forward to your class. I hope I don't disappoint anyone. Impossible. You're prepared, knowledgeable, and passionate. That's all you need. The group was bigger that week. Besides the usual 8 participants, there were 4 new people, including Helen, the grandmother Dorothy had met at the school. Everyone, Catherine announced, today our teacher is Dorothy, who will share her famous carrot cake recipe. Everyone applauded, and Dorothy felt welcomed. Well, began Dorothy, before we start cooking, I'd like to get to know you all a little. Has anyone ever tried making carrot cake before? 3 people raised their hands. And how did it turn out? Was it good? Mine came out too dry, said Rose. Mine fell apart, laughed John. Mine stuck to the pan, commented one of the newcomers. Perfect, said Dorothy. Those are exactly the problems we're going to learn to avoid today. Over the next 2 hours, Dorothy taught not just the recipe, but also the tricks she'd learned over decades of experience. How to know when the batter was just right, how to pick the perfect carrots, how to unmold the cake without breaking it. Dorothy, why do you beat the egg whites separately? Asked Letitia. Because it makes the cake fluffier, my dear. The whipped egg whites act like tiny little air balloons in the batter. Wow, no one ever explained that to me before, said Helen. That's what makes the difference between an ordinary recipe and a special one, Dorothy explained. Understanding the reason behind each ingredient, each technique. By the end of the class, when they tasted the cakes they'd made, every single one was delicious. Dorothy, this is the best carrot cake I've ever made in my life, said John. Mine too, Rose agreed. You know what I liked the most, said Helen. It was how you explained the reason behind everything. Now I understand what I was doing wrong with my cakes before. Catherine approached Dorothy. Dorothy, can I talk to you privately? Of course. They stepped away from the group. Dorothy, you have an incredible natural talent for teaching. The way you explain things, your patience, how you make everyone feel capable. Thank you, Catherine. Actually, I wanted to make a proposal. How would you feel about teaching regular classes here? Not every week, but maybe every other week. Dorothy was surprised. You think I could do it? I'm sure of it, and listen, it's not just me. Melissa was also impressed by the feedback people gave about you. But Catherine, you're the group coordinator. I don't want to take your place. Dorothy, you wouldn't be taking my place. You'd be helping me expand the program. Each of us has different specialties. I can coordinate, you can focus on cakes and desserts, we can bring in others to teach savory dishes. The idea excited Dorothy. You really think it would work? I'm certain. In fact, there are 3 new people here today specifically because they heard you were teaching. Really? Really? Helen told 2 friends, and they brought others. Your reputation is growing. Dorothy laughed. I'm still getting used to the idea of having a reputation. Dorothy, can I give you some advice? Of course. Accept that you're good at what you do. Accept that you have something valuable to offer. That's not vanity. It's recognizing your own talents. On her way home, Dorothy reflected on Catherine's proposal. Could it really be possible that she was finding a new purpose in life? "How did it go, Mom?" asked Patricia when she arrived. "It was wonderful, dear. Better than I expected." "Did everyone enjoy the class?" "They did. And you know what else? Catherine invited me to teach regular classes there." Michael, who was doing homework at the table, jumped out of his chair. "Grandma, you're going to be a real teacher." "Slow down, Michael. I'm still thinking about it." "But Grandma, why are you thinking? It's obvious you should say yes." Patricia stepped closer. "Mom, what's worrying you? Could I keep up the quality? Was it just beginner's luck?" "Mom, you've always been too much of a perfectionist. Remember when I was little and you worried about being a good mother? I do. And I always told you you were the best mom in the world. The same applies here. You're a great teacher. You just need to trust yourself." Robert arrived at that moment. "What are you all talking about?" "Grandma is going to be a cooking teacher," announced Michael. "Really, Mrs. Dorothy? That's fantastic." "I haven't decided yet, Robert. But why not? You have all the knowledge, you love teaching, you love helping people." Michael moved closer to his grandmother. "Grandma, remember when you taught me how to ride a bike?" "I do, sweetheart. At first I fell a lot, right? But you never gave up on teaching me." "That's true. And you told me that even those who teach really well sometimes make mistakes, but the important thing is to keep trying." Dorothy smiled. "You have a very good memory, Michael." "So, Grandma, if you taught me not to give up, why are you thinking about giving up?" The boy's logic was irrefutable. "You're right, Michael. I'll accept Catherine's offer." "Yay!" Michael cheered. "My grandma is going to be the most famous teacher in town." On Thursday, Dorothy had her first experience with adaptive dance. Patricia accompanied her to the studio, which was just 2 blocks from the New Hope Rehabilitation Center. The teacher, a young and energetic woman named Lauren, welcomed her warmly. "Dorothy, it's so nice to meet you. Melissa told me about you." "Melissa?" "Yes. She said you were starting to explore different activities at the rehab center, and she asked if I'd be interested in having you here." "And you are?" "Of course, I love working with people who are discovering new possibilities." Lauren showed Dorothy around the studio. It was a spacious room with mirrors on the walls and a professional sound system. "How does wheelchair dancing work?" asked Dorothy. "It's more similar to conventional dancing than you might think. We use the same principles: rhythm, body expression, coordination, just adapted to each person's abilities." "Is it hard to learn?" "Depends on what you consider hard. The technical part can be learned by anyone. The most challenging part is allowing yourself to be expressive, to feel the music and translate it into movement." Just then, 3 more people arrived for the class. 2 women and a man, all in wheelchairs. "Everyone, this is Dorothy, who's visiting our class today," Lauren introduced. "Hi, Dorothy," they greeted. "First time?" "First time. I'm really nervous." "That's normal," said one of the women named Beatrice. "I was nervous my first time too. I thought I'd look silly." "And did you?" laughed Dorothy. "Oh, I did," Beatrice chuckled. "But it was fun, and over time, I got better." Lauren began the class with warm-up exercises, simple movements to loosen the arms and torso. "Dorothy, don't worry about doing everything perfectly," Lauren advised. "Today is just for you to get a feel for it." The music started, and Dorothy was surprised to find she could follow the basic movements. It was different from the dancing she knew, but it was still dancing. "How are you feeling?" Lauren asked during a break. "Better than I expected," Dorothy admitted. "It's strange, but good." "What's strange?" "I thought I'd never be able to express myself through dance again. But this, it's different, but it's still expression." "Exactly. Dance isn't in the legs, Dorothy. Dance is in the heart, in the soul. The legs are just one possible tool." Over the next hour, Dorothy tried more complex movements, learned to use the wheelchair as part of the choreography, and even attempted some partner dancing with Beatrice. "Dorothy, you have a great sense of rhythm," remarked the man in the group named Mark. "Thank you. I've always loved music." "It shows. and you don't seem afraid to try. Actually, I'm terrified, Dorothy laughed. But I'm trying anyway. At the end of the class, Lauren spoke with Dorothy. How was the experience? Better than I imagined. Much better. Would you like to go back? I think so. I don't know if I have the talent for it, but it felt good. Dorothy, can I give you some advice? And of course, forget about talent for now. Focus on how the activity makes you feel. If it makes you feel good, that's reason enough to keep going. On the way home, Patricia remarked, Mom, I saw you dancing in there. You looked beautiful. I don't know if it was exactly dancing, sweetheart. Yes, it was, Mom. Maybe different from what you were used to, but it was dancing. And you looked happy doing it. It's true, I felt happy. I felt free. Free how? Free to express myself again. During these months, I felt like I'd lost all ways of physically expressing myself. Today, I found out that's not true. When they got home, Michael ran over to ask about the class. Grandma, how was the dance class? Did you really dance? I did, sweetheart. What's it like dancing in a wheelchair? It's different, Michael. You use your arms more, your torso, but it's beautiful, it's expressive. Are you going to keep doing it? I think I will, yes. Can I watch a class someday? Of course you can. I'll ask the teacher if it's possible. Robert approached. Mrs. Williams, how are you feeling with all these new activities? Feeling useful again, Robert. Feeling alive. That's wonderful. You're glowing. That night during dinner, the family made plans for the coming weeks. Mom, should we organize your schedule? Suggested Patricia. Cooking classes on Wednesdays, dance on Thursdays. And we can't forget about the time you spend with me, Michael reminded her. Of course not, sweetheart. You're still my priority. Grandma, can I suggest something? Of course, Michael. What if you kept a journal of your adventures? That way, you won't forget anything you're learning. A journal? Yeah, you could write about the classes, the people you meet, how you feel. And when you're even older, you can read it and remember everything. Dorothy thought it was an interesting idea. You know, that's a good idea, Michael. It's been a long time since I've written. And are you good at writing? The boy asked. I used to write very beautiful letters to your grandfather when we were young. Dorothy smiled. Then you are good at it. Will you do the journal? I will, sweetheart. In the weeks that followed, Dorothy's life settled into a completely new routine. Wednesdays were for cooking classes, Thursdays for dance, and the other days she dedicated to family and preparing material for her classes. The cooking group grew quickly. Within a month, they had 15 regular participants, and Catherine suggested they create a more structured program. Dorothy, what if we organized a lesson schedule? You could teach different types of cakes, pies, desserts. Do you really think there'd be demand for all that? I'm sure of it. Look, Catherine showed her a list of names. These are people on the waiting list to join your classes. Dorothy was amazed. There were over 20 names. Catherine, I can't believe so many people want to learn from me. Dorothy, you need to accept that you're an exceptional teacher. It's not just cooking techniques you're teaching. You teach confidence. You teach that it's possible to start over. You teach that physical limitations don't mean limitations in potential. What do you mean? Everyone who takes your classes leaves feeling more capable, not just at cooking, but at facing their own challenges. Dorothy reflected on Catherine's words. It was true that her classes had become more than just cooking lessons. She often ended up talking to students about perseverance, finding new purposes, and the importance of not giving up. Catherine, can I confess something? Of course. These last few months have been the most rewarding of my life. Even in a wheelchair, even with all the limitations, I feel more useful and fulfilled than I ever have. Why do you think that is? I think before, I lived for my family, which was good, but now I'm living for my family and for a larger community. I feel like I'm making a positive impact on so many people's lives. And you really are, Dorothy. You have no idea how often I hear people say your classes have changed their outlook on life. Meanwhile, the dance classes were also progressing. Dorothy discovered she picked up choreography more easily than she'd imagined, and Lauren suggested she participate in a group performance. A performance? Dorothy grew nervous. For who? It's a charity event we organize every year. We perform for families, friends, and some community members. I don't know, Lauren. I'm still learning. Dorothy, you've been with the group for 2 months. You've already learned several routines, and more importantly, you dance with your heart. Beatrice, her favorite dance partner, chimed in. Dorothy, you should do it. It's an amazing experience. But what if I forget the steps? What if I make a mistake? So what? Beatrice laughed. We'll improvise. Dance is about expression, not perfection. That night at home, Dorothy discussed the performance idea with her family. Grandma, you're going to dance in a show? Michael was thrilled. Maybe, Michael, I'm still thinking about it. But why think about it? Of course you should say yes. Michael's right, Mom, said Patricia. You've already overcome so many fears, so many challenges. Why stop now? It's just that a performance is different. There's an audience expecting everything to go right. Robert joined the conversation. Mrs. Williams, can I share my thoughts? Of course, Robert. You've already proven to yourself that you can cook, you can teach, you can dance. Now all that's left is proving you can share those talents with a bigger audience. And Grandma, Michael added, if you do a performance, can I come watch? Of course you can, sweetheart. Then please say yes, I really want to see you dance on stage. Her family's enthusiasm convinced Dorothy. All right, I'll do the performance. Michael jumped for joy and hugged his grandmother. My grandma's going to be a famous artist. In the following months, Dorothy split her time between rehearsals for the performance and her cooking classes, which kept growing. Catherine suggested they officially create a therapeutic cooking program, and Melissa offered institutional support from the rehab center. Dorothy, I'd like to make a more formal proposal, Melissa said in a meeting. What kind of proposal? How about we hire you officially as a therapeutic cooking instructor? Dorothy was speechless. Hire me? What do you mean? A real job, with a salary, set hours, official recognition. But, Melissa, I'm 72 and in a wheelchair. So what? Melissa smiled. You're the best instructor I've ever seen here. Age and a wheelchair don't change that. Dorothy looked at Patricia, who had tears in her eyes. Mom, you deserve this. You've worked hard your whole life, always been dedicated. Now you have the chance to do work you truly love. But honey, what if I can't handle it? What if it's too tiring? Mom, you've already been doing this informally for months. The only difference is now you'd be officially recognized for it. Michael, who had been quiet during the conversation, suddenly spoke up. Grandma, remember when you taught me we should always believe in our dreams? I do, sweetheart. Then if being a teacher is your dream, you have to believe you can do it. Melissa smiled. Michael's right, Dorothy. Besides, you could start with reduced hours. 2 mornings a week, for example. What if I don't adjust? Then you stop, it's that simple. But Dorothy, I'm sure you'll adapt perfectly. Dorothy took a deep breath. All right, I accept. Michael shouted with joy, Patricia cried with emotion, and Melissa smiled, satisfied. Dorothy, you've just officially become the first therapeutic cooking instructor at the New Hope Rehabilitation Center. 2 months later, the day of the dance performance arrived. Dorothy was nervous, but also excited. She had rehearsed tirelessly with Beatrice, and together they had created a beautiful, moving choreography. Grandma, you look stunning, Michael said when he saw her ready for the performance. Thank you, sweetheart, I'm so nervous. Why? You dance so well. There's going to be a lot of people watching. So what? They'll love you, just like everyone does. The whole family came to watch the performance. The theater was packed, with about 300 people in the audience. When it was Dorothy and Beatrice's turn to perform, Dorothy's heart was racing. But as soon as the music started, she forgot her nerves and focused only on expressing herself through dance. The choreography was a mix of gentle movements and moments of intensity, telling the story of 2 women who found in dance a way to overcome their limitations. For 4 minutes, Dorothy felt completely free, completely expressed. When the music ended, the audience was silent for a few seconds before erupting into applause. Dorothy and Beatrice hugged, overcome with emotion. Dorothy, you were perfect, Beatrice said. Michael ran to the stage as soon as the performance ended. Grandma, you were the most beautiful one up there. Everyone cried. Really, Michael? Really? The lady in front of us was crying. The man next to Dad, Robert, too. Everyone was moved. Patricia approached with tears in her eyes. "Mom, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. You were radiant up there." "Thank you, dear. I felt wonderful." Robert hugged Dorothy. "Mrs. Williams, you made me so proud today. What an incredible performance." Lauren, the dance teacher, came over. "Dorothy, can I talk to you?" "Of course, Lauren. You have a natural talent for performance. Have you ever thought about performing at other events?" "Other events?" "Yes. We regularly get invitations for performances at schools, nursing homes, community events. Would you be interested?" Dorothy looked at her family, who were all nodding enthusiastically. "I think so, Lauren. Why not?" In the following months, Dorothy's life became even richer and more varied. Besides her cooking classes at the rehab center, which were now her official job, she started giving private cooking lessons to smaller groups, regularly participated in dance performances, and even began writing a book of adapted recipes. "Grandma," Michael said one Sunday morning, "you're busier than I am." "It's true, my love, but it's a good kind of busy. It makes me happy. And you still have time for me." "I'll always have time for you, Michael. You're the one who taught me that the mind is stronger than the body, remember?" "I remember, and I was right, wasn't I?" "Absolutely right. If it weren't for you, I'd still be locked in my room feeling useless." Patricia approached them. "Mom, there's a letter for you." "A letter? From whom?" "It's from a publisher, about your recipe book." Dorothy opened the letter with trembling hands. It was a publishing offer for her book, Cooking from the Heart, Adapted Recipes for Everyone. "They want to publish my book," Dorothy exclaimed. "Really, Grandma? You're going to be a famous writer too?" "Looks like it, Michael." The whole family celebrated. In less than a year, Dorothy had gone from a depressed person with no prospects to a respected teacher, dancer, and now a published author. "Mom," said Patricia, "do you remember how you were a year ago?" "I do, my dear. It feels like another lifetime." "And do you remember what changed everything?" Dorothy looked at Michael, who was playing in the backyard. "It was him. It was that little boy telling me the mind is stronger than the body." "And do you believe that now?" "I believe it completely. Not in the way I first thought, imagining I'd walk again. But I believe the mind can give us the strength to find new paths, new purposes, new ways to be happy." 6 months later, Dorothy's book was launched in a special ceremony at the New Hope Rehabilitation Center. Present were her cooking students, her dance partners, her family, and dozens of people who had been moved by her story. Michael, now 7 years old, took the stage to talk about his grandmother. "My grandma always taught me that when you love something deeply and work really hard for it, dreams come true. She proved it's real." "And what was your grandmother's dream, Michael?" asked Melissa, who was hosting the event. "Her dream was to be useful again, to help people, to feel happy. And look at all she's accomplished." The audience applauded, moved. "And Michael," Melissa continued, "what's the most important lesson you've learned from your grandmother this year?" Michael thought for a moment. "I learned that it doesn't matter what happens to our bodies. If our minds are strong and our hearts are full of love, we can always start over." Dorothy took the stage in her wheelchair, radiant with happiness. "I'd like to thank everyone who helped me on this journey, especially my grandson Michael, who taught me that the mind truly is stronger than the body, not because it can heal physical limitations, but because it can give us the strength to rise above them and find new ways to live fully." "And Dorothy," Melissa asked, "what advice would you give to others going through similar situations?" "I'd tell them not to give up searching for their new purpose in life. Sometimes, when we lose something, we gain the chance to discover talents we never knew we had. And most importantly, accept help. Accept the love of those around you. That's what saved me." At the end of the event, an older woman from the audience approached Dorothy. "Dorothy, may I speak with you?" "Of course, my dear. My name is Teresa. My husband had an accident 6 months ago and is very depressed. May I bring him to meet you?" "Of course, Teresa. It would be a pleasure to talk with him." "Thank you. Your story gave me hope that he too can recover emotionally. Situations like this became common in Dorothy's life. Often people sought her help, inspiration, or simply someone who understood what they were going through. 2 years after the accident, on a sunny morning, Dorothy was in the same park where it all began, watching Michael play with other children. But now she wasn't there as someone who had been brought against her will. She was there by choice. "Grandma?" Michael ran up to her, sweaty from playing. "Are you happy?" "Very happy, my love. Even in the wheelchair." "Michael, can I tell you a secret?" "Of course." "I'm happier today than I was before the accident." "Really? Why?" "Because before I lived a small life, just for our family. Now I live a big life, touching the lives of so many people. The wheelchair took some things from me, but it gave me much greater ones." Michael smiled. "I always knew you'd be okay, Grandma." "How did you know?" "Because you have the strongest mind I know, and the strongest heart too." At that moment, Patricia approached with some news. "Mum, I just got a call. A school in New York City wants to invite you to give a talk about overcoming challenges." "A talk? For how many people?" 500. Dorothy was stunned. 500 people? What am I going to say to 500 people? "The same thing you say to one person, Mom. Your story, your experience, your lessons." Michael clapped his hands. "Grandma, you're going to be famous for real." "Michael, I don't want to be famous. I just want to keep helping people." "But Grandma, if you're famous, you'll be able to help even more people." The boy's logic made sense to Dorothy. "You're right, sweetheart. Maybe this is just another way to use the mind to overcome limitations." 3 years later, Dorothy Williams had become a well-known figure in the field of rehabilitation and resilience. Her book had sold over 50,000 copies. She gave talks regularly across the country, coordinated a therapeutic cooking program that had already helped more than 1,000 people, and she kept dancing and performing. But for her, the most special moments were still the afternoons she spent with Michael, now 10 years old, talking about life, dreams, and the importance of never giving up. "Grandma," Michael said one of those afternoons, "do you remember the day I told you the mind is stronger than the body?" "I remember it perfectly, my love. That was the day that changed my life." "Do you believe I always knew it would work out?" "I do, Michael. You had a faith I had lost. And now, do you have faith again?" "I have more faith than I've ever had in my life. Faith in myself, in people, in the possibilities that exist, even when everything seems lost." Michael hugged his grandmother. "Grandma, you're my hero. And you're mine, Michael. You saved me." "How did I save you?" "By reminding me that physical limitations don't define who we are. By showing me that love is stronger than any hardship. By teaching me it's never too late to start over." 5 years after the accident, Dorothy was giving a talk to a group of medical students. At the end of the presentation, a young student raised his hand. "Ms. Williams, do you really believe anyone can overcome any limitation?" Dorothy thought carefully before answering. "I don't believe anyone can overcome every physical limitation. Some limitations are permanent and can't be changed. But I do believe anyone can overcome the emotional and mental limitations those physical conditions might create." "What's the difference?" "The difference is this. It's one thing to accept that I'll never walk again. It's another to accept that because I can't walk, I can't be useful, happy, productive, or expressive. The first is a medical fact. The second is a personal choice." Another student asked, "And how do you make that distinction in practice?" "Every day, I wake up and make a mental list. What I can't do today because of the wheelchair, and what I can do today despite the wheelchair. The first list is short. The second is endless." "Can you give an example?" "Today, I can't walk up a flight of stairs, but I can teach 10 people how to cook, rehearse a dance routine, write a chapter of my next book, talk to my grandson about his dreams. The list of what I can do is always much longer than what I can't." A third student asked, "Ms. Williams, do you have any regrets about these past few years?" Dorothy smiled. "I do. I regret wasting 3 months feeling sorry for myself instead of using that time to discover my new possibilities. 3 months might not seem like much, but they were 3 months I could have spent helping people, growing and improving. And what advice would you give to healthcare professionals working with patients in similar situations? Don't focus only on physical rehabilitation. Focus also on emotional healing and finding new purpose. A patient may not regain full physical function, but they can discover a life even richer and more meaningful than before. After the lecture, Dorothy was approached by several students who wanted to learn more about her work. Situations like this had become routine in her life. On her way back home, she reflected on how her life had completely changed. From a retired grandmother who lived only for her family, she had become a respected professional, a published author, a sought-after speaker, an artist. But when she arrived home and saw Michael doing homework at the kitchen table, she realized none of it would matter if she didn't have the solid foundation of family love that had always sustained her. "How was the lecture, Grandma?" Michael asked, not looking up from his notebook. "It was wonderful, sweetheart. I talked about you." "About me? Why?" "Because you taught me the most important lesson of my life." Michael finally looked up at her. "What lesson?" "That a family's love can give you the strength to overcome anything, and that sometimes the wisest people come in small packages." Michael smiled. "Grandma, can I ask you something?" "Always, my love." "If you could go back in time and choose not to have the accident, would you?" Dorothy fell silent for a long moment, thinking about her grandson's deep question. "You know, Michael, for a long time, the answer would have been yes. But today I'm not sure I would." "Why?" "Because the accident took some things from me, but it gave me so much more. It gave me a purpose I never imagined I could have. It gave me the chance to help hundreds of people. It let me discover talents I didn't even know existed." "And do you think those good things couldn't have happened without the accident?" "Maybe they could have, Michael, but they probably wouldn't have. I was comfortable in my small life. Maybe I needed something drastic to push me to grow." Michael thought about his grandmother's answer. "Grandma, do you think God makes bad things happen so good things can come later?" "I don't know, my love. I don't know if God makes bad things happen, but I do know we can choose to turn bad things into good, and that choice depends on our mind, our heart, and the people around us. Like how I'm around you. Exactly how you're around me, always reminding me what's possible, encouraging me to try new things, believing in me when I don't believe in myself." Michael closed his notebook and moved closer to his grandmother. "Grandma, do you still remember the first time I told you the mind is stronger than the body?" "Like it was yesterday, my love." "And do you remember how you felt that day?" Dorothy closed her eyes, reliving that moment in the park. "I remember I was so angry at myself, at the situation, at life. I thought everything was over for me." "And now? How do you feel when you think about that day?" "Grateful, Michael. Grateful to have a grandson who never gave up on me, even when I gave up on myself." Just then, Patricia walked into the kitchen, returning from work. "What are you two talking about?" "About that day in the park, when I told Grandma the mind is stronger than the body," Michael explained. "Oh, the day that changed our lives," Patricia smiled. "Mom, do you remember how I was back then?" "I do, sweetheart. You were exhausted, desperate, and scared, Mom. So scared. Scared I wouldn't be able to take care of you properly. Scared you'd never be happy again. Scared our whole family would fall apart." Michael looked at his mother in surprise. "Mommy, were you scared? But you always seem so strong." "Michael, sometimes the strongest people are the ones who are the most afraid inside. I was terrified of losing Grandma, not physically, but emotionally." "And what changed?" asked the boy. "What changed was seeing your grandma rediscover who she was, seeing that she could be even more amazing than she ever was, just in a different way." Robert arrived just then, catching the end of the conversation. "Are you talking about Grandma's transformation?" "We're talking about how we all transform," corrected Dorothy, "because I wasn't the only one who changed these past few years." "What do you mean, Grandma?" asked Michael. You grew up and became an even wiser and more sensitive boy. Mommy learned to balance care with freedom. Daddy Robert learned that family isn't just about obligations, but about supporting each other's growth. Robert stepped closer and placed a hand on Dorothy's shoulder. Mrs. Williams, you're right. I learned that caring for someone doesn't mean solving all their problems, but giving them support to solve their own. And I learned, added Patricia, that protecting someone we love doesn't mean stopping them from taking risks, but being there when they need support to face those risks. Michael thought for a moment. And I learned that sometimes kids can teach important things to adults, and that we shouldn't be afraid to speak our minds when it's to help someone we love. Dorothy looked at her family gathered around her and felt deep emotion. You know what else I learned? I learned that real strength doesn't come from doing everything alone. Real strength comes from accepting help, from allowing yourself to be vulnerable, from trusting the people who love us. Grandma, said Michael, can I tell you a secret? Always, sweetheart. When I said that thing about the mind being stronger than the body, I didn't really know what it meant. I just felt you needed to hear it. Dorothy smiled tenderly. And you were right, Michael. Sometimes we don't need to fully understand something to know it's true. How did you know it was true? Because for the past 5 years, I've proved it to myself every day. Every time I teach a new recipe, every time I dance, every time I help someone overcome their own struggles, I'm proving that the mind really can overcome the body's limitations. Patricia was moved. Mom, you've become an inspiration to hundreds of people. Your book is helping families all across the United States. Your talks are changing how healthcare professionals treat patients with physical limitations. Sweetheart, all of that was only possible because I learned to listen to simple truths spoken by people who love me. The truth Michael told me was simple. Don't give up. Keep trying. Your mind can find new ways. Robert picked up the local newspaper on the table. Speaking of which, Mrs. Williams, did you see the article about your work in today's paper? What article? Robert opened the paper to the page in question. 77-year-old teacher proves physical limitations don't limit dreams. It's a feature on your therapeutic cooking program. Dorothy read the article with interest. Michael, come look. They mentioned you here. Really? What do they say about me? It says, according to Mrs. Williams, the transformation in her life began when her 6-year-old grandson, Michael, said the mind is stronger than the body. Today, 5 years later, she runs one of the most successful rehabilitation programs in the region. Michael blushed with pride. Grandma, can I keep this article? Of course, sweetheart. In fact, I'll keep all the memories from these years. One day when you're grown up, you'll be able to show your children how a simple phrase can change an entire life. My children? Michael laughed. Grandma, I'm still a kid. That's true, Dorothy chuckled. But time flies, Michael, and when you grow up, you'll understand even better the impact you've had on my life. Just then, the phone rang. Patricia answered. Hello? Oh, hi, Catherine. How are you? What? Really? That's wonderful news. Everyone grew curious about what Catherine was saying. Mom, it's Catherine. She said the therapeutic cooking program you created is going to be replicated in 10 more rehab centers across the country. Dorothy was moved. You mean other people in other cities will get the chance to rediscover their talents through cooking? Exactly. And Catherine said all the centers want you to train the new instructors. Michael jumped for joy. Grandma, you're going to travel all over the United States teaching people. It seems so, Michael. Who would have thought a 77-year-old woman in a wheelchair would travel the country working? I would, Michael exclaimed. I always knew you were special. Robert stepped closer. Mrs. Williams, can I just say how proud I am to be part of this family, seeing how we've all transformed over these years. Robert, thank you. You're my foundation, my strength. Without this family, none of this would have been possible. Grandma, Michael said, can I ask you something important? Of course, sweetheart. If you met a child who had just ended up in a wheelchair and they were really sad, what would you tell them? Dorothy thought carefully. I'd tell them I understand exactly how they feel, that it's okay to be sad, angry, or scared, but that's just the beginning of the story, not the end. And what else? I'd say inside them are talents, dreams, and possibilities they haven't even discovered yet, and the wheelchair can't take those things away. What if they said they didn't believe it? I'd say they don't have to believe it yet. They can start by trying small things one day at a time, and there will always be people around who believe in them, even when they can't believe in themselves. Michael smiled. Just like you did with me when I was scared to ride a bike. Exactly like that, my love. Patricia moved closer to her mother. Mom, do you know what else has changed over these years? What, dear? Our family's grown closer. Before, everyone lived kind of independently. Now we really support each other, encourage each other, grow together. That's true, Robert agreed. The hardship that seemed like it would tear us apart actually brought us closer. And you know why? Dorothy said. Because we learned that facing problems alone is much harder than facing them together, and that every person in the family has something unique to contribute. Michael leaned in. Grandma, what was the hardest thing to learn these past years? The hardest thing was accepting that I needed help. My whole life, I was the one helping others. Learning to receive help was humbling at first. And what was the easiest? The easiest was realizing I still had so much love to give. That never changed, only the way I gave it did. Just then, the house lights flickered and everyone looked outside. A gentle evening rain had begun to fall. Grandma, Michael said, do you like the rain? I love it, sweetheart, especially soft rains like this. They remind me that after the storm comes calm. Did our family go through a storm? We did, Michael. One that lasted a few months, but look where we are now, stronger, closer, happier. Robert stood up. How about we make a special dinner tonight to celebrate all these victories? Great idea, said Patricia. Mom, would you like to cook with us? I'd love to. And Michael, you'll be my main assistant as always. Of course, Grandma. What are we making? How about that carrot cake I teach in my classes? The same one you helped me perfect. Perfect. It's the cake that started it all. They spent the next hour cooking together, chatting, laughing, creating another precious memory. Dorothy watched her family working harmoniously in the kitchen and remembered how, 5 years ago, she thought she'd never have moments of joy again. Done, announced Michael as the cake came out of the oven. Grandma's famous cake. Michael, I'm not famous. I'm just a grandma who learned to use her talents in a new way. To me, you're famous, Grandma, and to a lot of other people too. When they sat down for dinner, Robert raised a toast. I'd like to toast to Dorothy, who taught us it's never too late to start over. And to Michael, who taught us that sometimes the simplest words hold the deepest truths. And I'd like to make a toast, said Patricia, to our family, who learned that true love isn't just about being together in the good times, but growing together through the hard ones. Michael raised his glass of juice, and I want to toast to my grandma, who proved that the mind really is stronger than the body. Dorothy lifted her glass with tears in her eyes. And I'd like to toast to unconditional love, which can transform any situation, no matter how difficult it seems. After dinner, when Michael was already asleep, Dorothy found herself alone on the porch, gazing at the stars and reflecting on her journey. Patricia joined her. What are you thinking about, Mom? I'm thinking about how mysterious life is, dear. How something that felt like the worst moment of my life ended up being the start of the best chapter. Do you really believe that? But I do. I'm not saying the accident was good. I'm saying the way we chose to respond to it created possibilities that never existed before. And if Michael hadn't said those words in the park, then I'd probably still be in my room feeling sorry for myself. But he did say them, dear, and that changed everything. Mom, can I confess something? Always, my dear. These past few years I've learned more about courage watching you than in my entire life before. Sweetheart, it's true, Mom. Seeing how you turned pain into purpose, limitations into opportunities, despair into hope. It taught me that courage isn't about not being afraid. Courage is being afraid and trying anyway. Dorothy held her daughter's hand. Patricia, you've always been my greatest achievement. Watching you become a strong, generous, present woman, It fills me with pride. Do you think Michael will remember all this when he grows up? I'm sure he will. And more importantly, he'll carry these lessons with him. One day when he faces his own struggles, he'll remember that the mind really is stronger than the body. They sat in silence for a few minutes, just taking in the night and the peace of the moment. Mom, what's your next dream? My next dream is to keep spreading this message, that no matter how old we are, no matter what limitations we face, it's always possible to start over when we have love, determination, and people who believe in us. And how do you plan to do that? Through talks, books, classes, but mostly by example, showing that a 77-year-old woman in a wheelchair can still have a rich, meaningful, and productive life. Just then, Michael appeared on the porch, his hair messy from sleep. Grandma, I couldn't sleep. Can I stay here with you? Of course, sweetheart. Come here. Michael settled into his grandmother's lap. What were you talking about? About dreams, Michael. What kind of dreams? About how dreams can change as life changes, and about how we should never stop dreaming. What's your dream now, Grandma? My dream is that my story inspires others to never give up on themselves. That when someone is going through a really tough time, they remember the grandma who thought her life was over at 72 and discovered it was actually just beginning again. Michael yawned. Your dream is already coming true, Grandma. I've heard a lot of people say you inspired them. Thank you, sweetheart. Grandma, can I tell you my dream? Of course, Michael. My dream is that when I grow up, I'll be just like you. That when something bad happens to me, I'll remember that the mind is stronger than the body and that it's always possible to start over. Dorothy kissed her grandson's forehead. Michael, you're already better than me. You learned that lesson at 6. It took me 72 years. But Grandma, you taught me that lesson. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't know. And if it weren't for you reminding me at the right time, I would have forgotten. Patricia smiled as she watched the conversation between mother and son. You two make quite the pair. It's true, said Robert, stepping onto the porch. Mrs. Williams and Michael, the team that proves age doesn't matter when it comes to wisdom and courage. Michael got up from his grandmother's lap. Now I can sleep. Thanks for talking with me. He kissed each of them and went back to his room. That boy is something special, said Robert. He really is, Dorothy agreed. And you know what? He doesn't even realize how special he is. He acts naturally with a pure heart. Just like you, Mom, said Patricia. What do you mean? You don't realize how special you are either. You act naturally, helping people, inspiring change, proving that limitations aren't the same as impossibilities. Dorothy thought about her daughter's words. Maybe that's it, dear. Maybe true strength happens when we stop trying to prove something and just start living the best way we can with what we have. And are you living the best way you can? I'm living better than I ever imagined possible. Robert stepped closer. Mrs. Williams, can I say you're an example for me too? As a man, as a father, as a person. Why, Robert? Because you taught me that real strength isn't about never falling. Real strength is getting back up after you fall. And getting back up doesn't always mean returning to how things were. It means finding a new way to stand. Dorothy's eyes filled with emotion. Robert, thank you. All of you gave me the strength to get back up. And you gave us the inspiration to grow as a family. They stayed on the porch a while longer, sharing memories from the past few years, making plans for the future, simply enjoying each other's company. When they finally went to bed, Dorothy lay thinking about how her life had become rich and meaningful in a way she'd never imagined possible. The next morning, she woke up excited for another day. She had a cooking class to prepare, a speech to write, and in the afternoon, she'd rehearse with her dance group for a new performance. But first, as always, she spent a few minutes talking with Michael over breakfast, sharing little bits of wisdom, listening to his dreams, remembering that sometimes the most important lessons come from the most unexpected places. And as Michael ate his cereal and told her about his plans for the day at school, Dorothy smiled, knowing her mind had truly become stronger than the limits of her body, and that each day brought new opportunities to prove it's never too late to start again. The end. Now tell us what you thought of this inspiring story and where you're watching from. Do you believe Dorothy made the right choices by accepting the challenges that came her way? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. Does your story or someone close to you resemble Dorothy's? We'd love to hear about your experiences. Don't forget to like this video and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartwarming stories like this one.